My name is Ashley Monroe, and I was 18 when I pushed my stepmother out onto the lawn and slammed the front door shut behind her. She stumbled backward, wine glass still in hand, shrieking at me like she owned the place. But the truth? That house was mine, always had been, she just didn't know it. Where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments. And if you've ever had to fight for the place you call home, stay with me, this story is for you. That morning in Kansas, the sky hadn't even lightened yet, but my room was already wide awake with yelling. My door flew open so hard it cracked against the wall. It's already 7 a.m. and you're still in bed. Darla's voice sliced through the quiet. She was standing in the doorway in yesterday's eyeliner and a bathrobe that was technically mine, gifted years ago from Grandma. Get up and make me breakfast. Before I could even form a response, she stomped into the room and ripped the blanket off me in one angry motion. Cold air bit at my legs. I shot up. You're not my mother. My voice came out sharper than I expected, but I didn't care. I snatched a hoodie off the floor and pulled it over my head. Excuse me, she snapped, hand still gripping the blanket. You heard me. I pushed past her and headed for the door, the hem of my hoodie brushing against my bare thighs. She didn't move. I won't tolerate that tone in my house. Funny, I muttered, gripping the doorknob. It's not yours. Behind me, my father's voice floated in from down the hall. Just do what she says, Ash, it's not worth the fight. I froze. He was in the hallway, still in his work boots, coffee thermos in hand, refusing to look at me. Not worth the fight, I repeated, stunned. You're seriously just gonna stand there? He scratched the back of his neck. We've talked about this, just keep your head down. She's had a hard week. She always has a hard week, I said bitterly. Darla crossed her arms, her smirk returning like she'd won something. At least someone around here does something useful. The heat behind my eyes rose fast and dangerous. I turned and slammed the door shut behind me so hard a framed photo rattled off the wall. In the hallway, my father sighed. That was his response to everything, silence and sighs. The kitchen was a disaster. Cereal boxes left open, dishes crusted with dried eggs, and a smudge of lipstick on my favorite coffee mug, Darla's handiwork. I didn't touch any of it. I grabbed a granola bar from the pantry and a backpack that still had yesterday's textbooks, then slipped out the back door. The cold hit me harder outside, but it was quieter. No condescending remarks, no guilt-soaked silences. Just the breath of wind and the crunch of my boots on frozen grass. I used to think the house meant family. I used to think it was a safe place. But lately, it felt like I was a guest in my own home. Scratch that, less than a guest. A maid, a punching bag, a reminder of something neither of them wanted to face. They didn't know the truth, not yet, but someday soon, they would, and I'd be the one holding the door. It was past noon by the time I crept back through the side door. My hoodie still smelled like frost and gasoline from the old space heater in Mr. Cleary's garage. He let me hang there for a while. He always did when things got loud at home. He didn't ask questions, just handed me a lukewarm mug of cocoa and tinkered with some busted lawnmower like it was the most interesting thing in the world. I used to think he didn't notice anything. Turns out, he notices everything. He just doesn't make you feel like a burden for existing. The house was quieter now. No yelling, no clinking glasses, no forced superiority in high heels clicking against the tile. Darla was either napping or gone, probably both. I dropped my backpack on the floor and sank into the mess that was my bedroom. The air was stale with damp laundry, and the scent of an old vanilla candle I kept relighting to feel something warm. There were 3 overflowing baskets in the corner, none of them mine. Darla always tossed her and Dad's clothes into my room like I was the housekeeper. Delicates, boxers, wine-stained blouses, everything dumped on me without a second thought. I grabbed a wrinkled button-down and started folding slowly, methodically. Something about straight lines made me feel less crooked. The door creaked open. Hey, Dad, holding the newspaper like it was a shield. His boots were still caked in dry dirt, but at least he'd taken off the jacket. He stood just inside the doorway, like entering too far might trigger something. I didn't stop folding. You need something? He hesitated. No, just thought I'd check on you. I glanced up. Let her scream at me this morning, again, then watched her tear my blanket off and walk out like she runs this place. And now you want to check on me? He exhaled through his nose, like this conversation exhausted him before it even began. Ashley, don't start. I dropped the shirt on the bed. Start? You think I'm starting something? She's the one that starts every single day. He looked down at the carpet, always the carpet. You just need to endure a bit longer. Endure, I repeated. My voice didn't rise, it didn't have to, the disgust came through just fine. You mean put up with it, be quiet, smile, fold her laundry and pretend she doesn't treat me like trash in my own house. He flinched but not enough to matter. It's not forever, he muttered. She's just adjusting. I couldn't help the bitter laugh that escaped. Adjusting? She's lived here 6 years, Dad. I was 12 when she moved in. How much longer does she need? His mouth opened and closed like he might offer an answer. But he didn't. Instead, he retreated behind that paper, settling into the armchair in the hallway like he hadn't just broken something else inside me. The silence stretched between us like glue, heavy, sticky, irrevocable. I stared blankly at the wall, eyes landing on a crooked poster from a band I didn't even like anymore. The corners were peeling, the tape curling like it was tired of holding on. Maybe I was tired of holding on too. Eventually, I went back to folding laundry. One shirt, 2 socks that didn't match, a red silk scarf I'd never seen before, each piece a reminder, not of love but of labor, not of family but of servitude. I folded until my hands went numb. It was supposed to be special. A few strings of dollar store fairy lights, some paper lanterns swaying from the trees, and a Bluetooth speaker borrowed from a friend. I baked my own cake, yellow with fudge frosting, like Grandma used to make. Darla rolled her eyes when she saw it cooling on the counter earlier that afternoon. You know, people usually just buy a cake for their birthday, right? Not bake their own like it's a charity event. I didn't respond. If I said anything, it would have turned into a performance. And tonight, I just wanted peace. So I shrugged, carried my cake out to the table in the backyard, and reminded myself this was mine. My moment. Even if no one else cared. I'd invited 10 people, just 10. Friends from school, a few from my old job at the coffee shop, and Trish, my cousin who hadn't RSVP'd but always showed up last minute with a loud laugh and a hug that felt like summer. 5 showed up. Alicia brought me a homemade bracelet. It's not much, she said, slipping it onto my wrist, but the colors reminded me of you. That nearly made me cry on the spot. We laughed under the string lights and ate off mismatched paper plates. For a little while, I forgot about the broken pieces of the house behind me, until Darla stepped outside. She stood on the patio with a wine glass in one hand and judgment in the other. Her voice carried over the music. Well, I guess when no one RSVPs, you get this kind of crowd. Every head turned. The music didn't stop, but the laughter did. I stared at her, heat rising to my cheeks. Darla, please, I'm just saying, she shrugged. Kind of sad when your own birthday looks like a school lunch break. She took a sip of wine and smirked. Oh, is that Alicia? Weren't you the one who got fired from the bookstore for stealing candles? Alicia's face went pale. Darla, I snapped. That's enough. She laughed like I'd told her a joke. Relax, I'm just making conversation. But it was too late. Alicia muttered something about having to be up early and grabbed her coat. One by one, the others made awkward excuses, homework, long drives, headaches, and left. I watched the backs of their cars disappear down the street, each red taillight another goodbye. By the time the last one left, I was alone in the backyard. The cake sat half-eaten on the table. The lights still glowed, flickering like they were embarrassed for me. I stood there for a long time, bracelet on my wrist, wind tugging at the edges of the plastic tablecloth. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just cleaned everything up like it was any other night, scraped plates into the trash, packed the leftover cake, and carried everything inside. The kitchen smelled like burnt garlic and Merlot. Darla was already at the table with another glass of wine and a smug grin. She didn't even wait for me to sit down. Your little party, she snorted. Total train wreck. I placed the cake in the fridge and turned to face her. It was important to me. That's all I said. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't flinch, she tilted her head and made a faux pity face. Aw, honey, that's what makes it sad. Dad sat at the table too, poking at his eggs. He didn't look up, didn't say a word. I pulled out a chair, sat down, just to feel like I hadn't been erased. You could have defended me, I said to him quietly. He sipped his coffee. Didn't want to make it worse. It was already worse, I replied. He looked down at his plate and stabbed his fork into a piece of sausage like it owed him something. I excused myself without touching the food. The plate stayed there, like everything else that gets left behind in this house. That night, I lay on my bed with the lights off, staring at the bracelet on my wrist. Red and gold beads, woven tight. Someone had remembered me. Someone had thought I was worth making something for. That had to count for something. Somewhere deep in my gut, I felt something begin to shift, just a tremor, but it was there. This house wasn't home anymore. And someday soon, that was going to matter. The morning after the party, I woke up with the taste of ash in my mouth. Not real ash, just the dull, smoky burn of humiliation that lingers in your chest. The kind that doesn't go away with sleep. I didn't go to school. I didn't check my phone. I didn't fold the laundry that was still spilling out of the baskets in the corner. I pulled on jeans, grabbed a scarf from the doorknob, and walked out the front door like the house had never belonged to me. My feet hit the pavement and didn't stop. I didn't even know where I was headed, just not there. Anywhere but there. The Kansas air was brisk, bright with early fall. Leaves rustled down the sidewalks in gold and copper waves, gathering in corners like secrets. My hands were buried deep in my hoodie pocket, my head ducked, when I heard someone shout my name. Ashley. I turned slowly, squinting into the sun. She was standing outside Java Junction, one hand holding a to-go cup, the other waving wildly. Trish. I hadn't seen her in months. My cousin, my favorite one, if I'm honest. She was the kind of person who wore loud earrings and said whatever she wanted and somehow still got invited everywhere. I blinked. Trish. She was already walking toward me, auburn curls bouncing with every step. Girl, where have you been? She asked, enveloping me in a warm, coffee-scented hug. I was gonna come to your birthday last night, but I got called into a double shift. Then I heard Darla pulled one of her classic moves again. I tried to brush it off. It was nothing. Trish leaned back, scanning my face. You always say that, and it's never true. We stood in silence for a second. Then she grabbed my hand. Come inside. You need caffeine and someone who actually likes you. I followed her into the little cafe, grateful for the heat and the distraction. The place smelled like cinnamon and espresso, and the barista behind the counter gave Trish a wink and a free refill. We tucked into a booth near the window, and she pushed a steaming mug of something sweet and frothy toward me. So, she said, wrapping her hands around her cup. Want to talk about it? I stared at the foam on top of my drink. It was supposed to be a party, I said quietly. And she ruined it, on purpose. She said no one came because I'm not worth the trouble. I blinked fast. And then she called Alicia a thief in front of everyone. Trish sucked in a sharp breath through her teeth. Of course she did. That woman wouldn't know kindness if it was gift-wrapped and hand-delivered. I gave her a weak smile. It's just words, I'll get over it. No, she said, leaning in. See, that's the problem. You've been getting over it for years. You shouldn't have to. I didn't know what to say to that. She stared at me for a long second, then reached into her oversized purse and pulled out her phone. You know I've been helping Grandma's attorney catalog her estate files, she said casually, like she was talking about a weather app. Found something the other day I thought you might want to see. She tapped her screen, scrolled, then turned the phone toward me. A scanned document, legal looking. Last will and testament of Margaret Louise Monroe. My grandmother. My throat went dry. Trish tapped a line halfway down the page with her nail. There, right there. I read the sentence once, then again. I bequeathed the property at 314 Willow Creek Drive to my granddaughter, Ashley Monroe, to be held in her name alone. My heart stopped. That's my address, I whispered. Trish nodded, watching me carefully. I didn't know. No one told me. Darla knows, she said bluntly. She pretends she doesn't, but she knows. Your dad knows too. But as long as you didn't bring it up, they could pretend it wasn't real. I stared at the phone, the letters blurred. She left it to me, I whispered again. She actually left it to me. Trish reached across the table and grabbed my hand. Because she loved you. You were her world. And she would have never let this happen if she were still here. The weight of it hit me like a sudden downpour. All those years of swallowing my voice, of folding laundry and tiptoeing around Darla's moods, and trying to make myself small enough not to be a problem. I wasn't a guest in that house. I wasn't even a tenant, I was the owner. A spark flickered deep inside me. Not anger, something older than that, something steadier, power. I met Trish's eyes. I'd forgotten that, I whispered. She smiled slowly. Then it's time to remember. That evening, just before the sky gave into twilight, I walked out the door with a bundle of peonies cradled in my arms. No one asked where I was going. Darla was sprawled on the couch, yelling at the TV like it owed her money. My dad was out in the garage pretending to fix something, probably hoping the noise would shield him from needing to make eye contact. I didn't say goodbye. I just pulled the door shut behind me and started walking. The florist had nearly closed when I got there, but the girl at the counter didn't ask questions. She just rang up the Blooms and offered me a free ribbon when I mentioned they were for my grandma. I chose deep green. Grandma always said it reminded her of rain-soaked gardens and beginnings. The cemetery wasn't far. Just a quiet slope past the high school, tucked between a white-fenced pasture and a row of tall cottonwoods. I used to come here with her on Saturdays when I was little. She'd bring a thermos of tea and talk to Grandpa like he was still listening. Maybe he was. Now it was her I needed to talk to. The wind had picked up by the time I reached the hill. The last of the day's warmth clung to the horizon, casting long shadows between headstones. I found her grave easily. The stone was modest, just like she was. Margaret Louise Monroe, 1939–2018. Beloved mother, grandmother, friend. I knelt beside it and placed the peonies at the base. My knees sank into the earth, grounding me in a way I hadn't felt in years. For a long time I said nothing. Just let the silence wrap around me like a blanket. Then my voice cracked the stillness. "Thank you," I whispered. "Thank you for not forgetting me." It was barely more than breath, but in that quiet it felt like thunder. I reached out and ran my fingers along the smooth edges of her name. I should have remembered sooner. I don't know why I forgot. I think I just stopped believing I mattered. But you knew what they'd try to take from me. A gust of wind swept through the trees above. I closed my eyes. And suddenly she was there, not in body but in memory. Grandma's kitchen on a snowy morning, the smell of cinnamon rolls thick in the air, her voice humming as she wiped flour off my nose. Her stories at bedtime, whispered just for me, about brave girls and hidden treasure and houses that could protect you if you only claimed them. Her arms around me after my mom died, rocking me gently while the world felt too cruel to survive. Those memories poured in like warm water, filling up the hollow places I'd learned to carry. "I miss you so much," I said. A single tear slipped down my cheek, but I didn't wipe it away. I stayed like that for a while. Let the sky go from soft pink to indigo, stars slowly stitching themselves across the dark. I looked up and imagined she was one of them, watching, amused, waiting for me to finally remember who I was. Not Darla's errand girl. Not a forgotten burden, but Margaret Monroe's granddaughter, and the rightful owner of a home. As I stood to leave, the wind tugged at the ribbon tied around the stems. I pressed the bouquet gently against the stone to keep it in place. "I'm going to make it right," I said softly. "You gave me the key. It's time I used it." I turned back toward the path, the moon rising behind me. My feet didn't feel as heavy now. Something had shifted, not in the world but in me. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't just surviving, I was remembering. And remembering was the first step toward reclaiming everything they tried to erase. I came back home under a quiet sky. The stars were still out, but the spell of the night was already breaking. The moment I turned onto our street, the house stuck out like a sore thumb, every light on, laughter spilling from the windows like smoke. Darla's laugh, it was shrill and sharp and unmistakable. My fingers tightened around my phone as I walked up the front steps. I didn't need to guess who was over. Tuesday night was her little women's wine circle, which really meant half-empty bottles, loud gossip, and her friends pretending to be richer and younger than they were. Inside, the living room was chaos. Empty glasses on the side table. Cheese tray half melted. One of them, Sharon, I think was dancing to music that didn't quite match her rhythm, while another one squealed about someone's third divorce being the charm. Darla was draped over the arm of the couch like a queen. Her lipstick was smudged, and she was laughing too hard at something that probably wasn't funny. None of them noticed me at first. I stood at the edge of the hallway in my pajama pants and a sweatshirt, hair still damp from my earlier walk. I didn't want to fight. I didn't want drama. I just wanted to sleep. "Excuse me," I said, keeping my voice soft but steady. "Could you please keep it down? I have school in the morning." The music didn't stop, but the laughter did. Darla turned her head slowly, raising an eyebrow. "Well, look who's alive," she said. Little Miss Moody finally crawled out of her crypt. A few of the women snorted. One sipped her wine and whispered something behind her hand. I took a breath. "I'm just asking for some quiet. It's past midnight." Darla stood, wobbling slightly in her heels. She took a long sip from her glass, her eyes locked on mine. "You live here for free, Ashley," she said. "The least you can do is not kill the vibe." "I don't live here for free," I replied before I could stop myself. "Grandma left me this house." Silence. It only lasted a beat, but it felt longer. Then Darla laughed, actually laughed, like I'd told a joke. Her shoulders shook, wine sloshing in her glass. "You hear that, girls?" she slurred. "Princess thinks she owns the place now." Sharon chuckled. "Must have been a strong hot chocolate tonight." My cheeks flushed hot, my fists curled. "I'm serious," I said quietly. "You need to turn the music down, I'm not asking again." Darla took one slow step toward me. "Oh, you're not asking again," she said, her smile curling in that mean, lazy way she always did when she was 2 glasses past cruel. "What are you gonna do, sweetie? Write me a stern poem?" She was close now, too close. The glass tipped in her hand, I could smell the cheap Pinot on her breath, then with a flick of her wrist she slapped me, right across the face. It wasn't hard enough to leave a bruise, but it didn't have to be. The sound echoed, sharp and sudden, and for a moment the room went dead silent. My mouth fell open in shock. Not because it hurt, but because she actually did it, in front of people. A beat later, the laughter started again. Nervous at first, then full-blown cackles. One of the women howled, "Oh my God, Darla, I didn't stay." I turned on my heel, heart pounding, eyes burning, and walked away, up the stairs, into my room. I closed the door with trembling hands, locked it, and leaned my back against it like I was holding something back. I didn't cry, not yet, but my cheeks were burning. It was the humiliation more than the pain. Not just from her, but from all of them. The women who'd watched it happen and laughed like it was entertainment, like I was part of the show. In the dim light of my bedroom, I stood in front of the mirror and touched the side of my face. It was red, not bleeding, just marked. A line had been crossed, not with fists, with intention. And something in me, something old and patient and quiet, shifted again. I wouldn't be asking next time. The next morning, I didn't reach for the snooze button. My eyes were swollen and dry, but the tears had already run their course hours ago. I hadn't slept, not really. I'd watched the window turn from black to blue, waiting for the sun like it might bring clarity, and in its pale, golden light I finally knew what I had to do. I slid my phone from the charger and scrolled through local listings. I wasn't looking to move. No, I was looking for someone who could help me take control. Fast. After a few clicks, I landed on a profile. Carla Bixby, licensed realtor, trust and estate specialist. Her face was kind, her reviews solid, and something about the way she smiled in that photo made me believe she got people like me. I tapped call. She answered on the second ring. "This is Carla." I cleared my throat. "Hi, my name is Ashley Monroe. I'm calling about a property I'd like to sell." "Sure, I can help with that," she said, bright and easy. "Are you the homeowner?" I felt my fingers tighten around the phone. "Yes, I am." Silence, then a warm chuckle. "All right, Ashley, when's a good time for me to come by?" "Today," I said. "This afternoon if you can." There was a beat of pause, surprise maybe, but then, "I'll rearrange a few things. Text me the address and I'll be there by 4. I spent the rest of the morning cleaning, not because I wanted the place to sparkle, but because I needed something to do with my hands. I dusted shelves that hadn't been touched in months, scrubbed sticky spots off the kitchen floor, and packed away a few things that had always felt like mine. A photo of Grandma and me in her garden, a chipped teacup she used to drink from, a book she gave me when I turned 10. I didn't bother telling Darla. She was still asleep, probably hungover. The shrill sound of her laughter from the night before still echoed in my ears, but I didn't flinch anymore. Not this time. By 3:45, I was standing at the window, watching for a silver sedan. At exactly 4, it pulled into the driveway. I opened the door before Carla even knocked. She was in a navy blazer, clipboard tucked under her arm, hair pulled into a neat bun, but her eyes were kind like I'd guessed. "Hi, Ashley," she said, stepping forward and shaking my hand. "You have the look of someone who's more than ready." I nodded. "Yeah, I am." She glanced at the house. "You sure you want to sell?" "I always ask. Sometimes people just want to be heard." "I've gone unheard long enough," I said, stepping back so she could enter. "Come in." We walked through the living room first. I motioned toward the wine-stained throw pillows and cluttered coffee table still strewn with half-empty glasses. "Excuse the mess," I said calmly. "It's not mine." Carla nodded but didn't comment. She walked with quiet purpose, taking notes, asking questions, square footage, upgrades when the roof was last replaced. I answered everything clearly. Every detail I'd memorized from Grandma's papers. I had nothing to hide. It wasn't until we reached the hallway near the bedrooms that the silence shattered. "What the hell is going on, Darla?" She appeared at the top of the stairs in her robe, hair a mess, mascara smudged, voice coated in irritation. Carla turned politely. "Hi there, are you a tenant here?" Darla blinked like she'd been slapped. I'm the woman of this house, she snapped, descending the stairs in jerky steps. Ashley, what is this? Who is this woman? I didn't blink. This is Carla Bixby, I said evenly. She's a realtor, and she's here to evaluate the property. Darla's voice rose, shrill and panicked. You don't get to bring strangers in here and play house. This is my home. I stepped forward, keeping my voice low and clear. No, it's not, Darla froze. This house, I said, was left to me by my grandmother. I have the will, the deed, everything, you've known this. You just didn't want to believe I'd ever act on it. Carla stood quietly beside me, her eyes steady. Darla's mouth opened, closed. You think you can just sell it out from under us? I tilted my head. I don't think, Darla, I know. Her robe slipped slightly off her shoulder, but she didn't notice. Her face turned blotchy with disbelief. You're bluffing, she said weakly. Bill won't let this happen. You mean my dad? I asked. The man who says nothing and looks away every time you humiliate me in my own house. He can't stop me, not anymore. The silence that followed was the loudest thing I'd heard in months. Carla gently broke it. Ashley, shall we continue the walkthrough? I nodded. Yes, let's. As I turned to lead her down the hall, I felt Darla's stare like heat on my back. But for the first time since she moved in, I didn't shrink. I didn't explain. I just moved forward. That night, the house didn't sleep. You could feel it in the walls. The stillness wasn't calm, it was coiled. Waiting. Carla had left a few hours earlier, promising to send paperwork the next morning. I'd walked her to the door like I'd done it 100 times before. She gave me a nod of reassurance, then drove off into the orange dusk. The minute her car disappeared, Darla vanished too. She didn't scream or throw anything, not yet. No, she did something worse. She went silent, strategic, brewing, and I knew exactly where she went. The garage, where Bill always retreated when things got tense, fiddling with tools, fixing nothing. A man allergic to confrontation, addicted to avoidance. I didn't go after them. I didn't need to. I just sat in my room, door ajar, waiting. Their voices carried through the drywall. She's bringing strangers into our house, Darla hissed. That realtor looked like she was ready to take measurements. Bill grunted something unintelligible, probably staring at his wrench like it had the answers. Don't you get it? She continued, voice cracking. She's trying to sell it, out from under us, your daughter. She's just upset, he muttered. Darla cut him off. No, she's dangerous now. She's not bluffing, Bill. That little brat thinks she can take everything. There was a beat of silence, a sound like something being dropped. Then Bill said, quieter now, she said the house was hers. She's lying, Darla said quickly, too quickly. She's a kid. She doesn't know what she's talking about. Your mother left it to you, didn't she, or both of us? More silence. Then footsteps, heavy ones. I sat on the edge of my bed, already bracing. My door creaked open. Dad stood in the frame, his shoulders hunched, his mouth a tight line. His face looked older than usual, gray at the edges, like truth was wearing him down. What are you doing, Ash? He asked. Not angry, just tired. I didn't flinch. I'm selling what's mine, I said calmly. His brow furrowed. You know this isn't just about paperwork. You live here, we live here. No, I said, standing slowly. You two occupy the space, I survive in it, that's not the same thing. Bill looked around my room like the answer might be taped to the wall, like maybe I was bluffing, a tantrum, a phase. I don't understand, he said, rubbing the back of his neck. I crossed my arms. Did Grandma ever talk to you about the will? He paused. That told me enough. She mentioned something, he muttered. But after she passed, Darla said it was settled. Darla said, I let that hang in the air. He looked uncomfortable, like he was starting to see the gaps in the stories she fed him. I found the documents, I continued. Grandma left the house to me, only me. Trish confirmed it. She's been helping the attorney organize estate records. There's a signed, notarized copy. You can call the lawyer if you don't believe me. Bill stared at me, silent. Then he pulled out his phone. Right there, standing in my doorway, he dialed a number I didn't recognize and walked out without a word. I sat back down, suddenly cold. My heart beat against my ribs like it wanted out. Not because I was scared, because it was real now. A few minutes later, I heard him speaking softly downstairs, then silence, then footsteps coming back up. He entered the room without knocking. His face looked different now, drawn, stunned. A man realizing he'd been walking in the wrong direction for too long. I just got off the phone with Margaret's lawyer, he said, his voice tight. I waited. She left the house to you, he said. All of it, I nodded once. I know. He stood there like the words didn't know where to land. It's true, he whispered, mostly to himself. It's all hers. Something shifted between us in that moment, not anger, not grief, recognition, he knew, and now he had to decide what he'd do with that truth. But me, I'd already decided. By morning, Darla had a new strategy. Gone were the sharp edges and the wine-fueled rage. Instead, she emerged into the kitchen in full soft focus mode, hair curled, makeup gentle, voice low and sugary. I was sipping coffee at the counter, flipping through Carla's emailed prep notes. The first showing was in 2 hours. She had 2 interested buyers lined up. Darla hovered like a ghost in a silk robe. "Ashley," she said softly, hands clasped in front of her. "Can we talk?" I looked up, but not for long. "You can talk. I'll listen while I clean." "Closer." "Sweetheart, I know we've had our differences, but let's not do anything we can't take back." I raised an eyebrow. "Selling my house isn't a mistake. Let's not pretend this is sudden." "I understand you're hurt," she said, inching closer, "but what would your father do without this place? He's lived here since you were a baby. This is his home too." "He doesn't act like it," I said evenly. "And let's not pretend this is about Dad." She blinked. "I'm trying to meet you in the middle." "There is no middle," I replied, setting down the coffee cup. "I have a showing in 2 hours, so if you wouldn't mind, please clear the clutter." Darla's mouth opened, but no sound came. It was the first time I'd ever seen her thrown off script. She turned and left without another word. I moved through the house deliberately, straightening chairs, opening curtains. I even baked muffins, store-bought mix, but the smell was magic. Carla had told me the little things made people feel like a house could become a home. At exactly 10 a.m., her silver sedan pulled up. 2 cars followed behind. A couple in their early 40s with a toddler and a single woman in a business suit who moved like she knew exactly what she wanted. I greeted them at the door with a calm I didn't know I could summon. "Come on in," I said, stepping aside. "Please, make yourselves comfortable." Carla gave me a brief nod of admiration. The toddler clapped at the scent of the muffins. The single woman asked about the plumbing and natural light. I answered everything, cool, clear, in control. Darla, she sat in the corner of the living room in a ridiculous display, robe cinched tight, a tissue clutched dramatically in one hand, fake tears glistening. "She's selling my home," she whispered loudly to no one. "My memories." The couple glanced at her, uncomfortable. The businesswoman didn't even flinch. "She's not the owner," I told them gently. "I am, it's fully documented. If you'd like to see the paperwork, Carla has copies." Darla sniffled louder. "I gave this place everything." I didn't respond. I just moved on to the hallway, pointing out the refinished hardwood and the view of the garden from the back bedroom. By the time the showing ended, Darla had wilted in her chair like a cut flower. The act wasn't landing. Her audience had moved on. When Carla and the buyers stepped outside to debrief, I lingered in the doorway. Darla stood, wiping under her eyes, but there was no conviction left in her posture. "You're making a mistake," she said. I met her eyes, steady. "Maybe, but at least it's mine to make." The sun was bleeding gold across the living room walls when it happened. The day had been unusually still, too still. Like the moment before a thunderclap, when the air forgets how to breathe. Darla had retreated to her room after the showing, slamming the door so hard a picture fell off the hallway wall. I left it where it landed. Broken things deserved their silence. I was in the kitchen wiping down the counter when I heard the sound of the garage door opening. Then footsteps measured, heavier than mine. My father stepped into the room. He looked different, not tired for once. Not checked out or buried in his newspaper, just still. Like he had finally stopped running from something inside himself. He glanced at me. "She's packing." I froze, dish towel in hand. "What?" "She thinks if she cries hard enough, she can make this your fault." His voice didn't waver. "But it's not, it never was." I didn't respond. I didn't trust my voice not to crack. "I should have stopped this years ago," he said. "I just wanted peace." He looked up at me. "But it was never peace, was it? It was silence. And that's not the same thing." Before I could answer, Darla stormed in from the hallway, dragging a suitcase behind her with one hand and a glass of wine in the other. "Oh look," she scoffed, "the ghost speaks." Her eyes landed on my father, narrowed. "You take a stand, that's rich." Bill didn't move, he didn't flinch. "Enough is enough, Darla," he said quietly. "You're pathetic," she spat. "Letting her manipulate you. She's selling your home, Bill. You've lived here longer than she's been alive." I stepped between them. "No," I said. "He's been surviving here just like I have." She turned to me, her mouth curling into something sharp. "You think this is strength? Turning your back on your own family, tossing people out like garbage." I didn't raise my voice, I didn't yell, I just walked to the front door, opened it wide, turned back. This is no longer your home. She stared at me, laughing, disbelieving. You wouldn't dare. I walked forward, grabbed her suitcase and rolled it outside, set it down on the porch with care, then I stepped back in. You can leave on your own, I said, or I'll call the sheriff to help you understand boundaries. Your choice. For a second she didn't move. Then she lunged forward like she might push past me. I didn't let her. One hand on her shoulder, one firm, steady push. She stumbled out onto the lawn, glass clinking in her hand, robe flaring like a defeated flag. Her mouth opened in outrage, but the door clicked shut before she could speak. I locked it with shaking fingers. Bill stood behind me, stunned. We listened as Darla screamed outside, venom in every word. But I didn't unlock the door. And this time, neither did he. She didn't leave quietly. From the porch, Darla's voice twisted into something wild and bitter. Her heels clacked on the steps as she paced, her shrieks rising like sirens under the flickering porch light. You think you've won? She howled, fist banging once, twice against the locked door. You ungrateful brat, you wouldn't last a week without me. Inside, the silence was thick. I stood frozen in the entryway, hand still on the doorknob. My fingers trembled, not from fear but from release. She was out, really out. For the first time in 6 years, her voice wasn't echoing through the walls of this house like a permanent fixture, and yet my body didn't quite believe it yet. Bill stood across from me, back against the far wall, his face pale in the glow of the hallway light. He looked like someone just pulled him from deep water. We both listened as she raged. You think this place will love you back? This house is poison. You're going to rot in it. My throat burned, but I stayed still. Then came the sound of her wine glass shattering against the porch railing. I flinched. Not because I was afraid, because I knew it was a goodbye. A violent, final, petty one. Then nothing, no more footsteps, no more yelling, no more Darla. Only the porch light buzzing faintly overhead and the brittle cold of Kansas night pressing against the front windows. I turned slowly to face my father. He was staring at the door, then at me. Something in his expression softened. It's about time someone did what I couldn't, he said. His voice was low, almost ashamed, but not defensive, not anymore. I waited too long, he added. I let her twist this house into something ugly. I didn't answer right away. I just exhaled slowly and looked around, the lamp in the corner, the dusty frames on the wall, the rug Grandma picked out that Darla always called hideous. Then I looked at him and said what I'd been carrying since I was 12. This house will never be a place of cruelty again. My voice didn't shake, and for the first time he didn't try to soften it, he just nodded. Outside, the wind picked up. A leaf skittered across the porch, but the yelling was gone, the noise was gone. And the night was finally quiet. By morning the quiet had taken root. I woke to sunlight pooling at the edges of my curtains and a stillness so complete it felt sacred. No slammed cabinets. No sarcastic remarks floating up from the kitchen. No stiletto heels clicking down the hallway like a warning bell, just breath, just space. I stood at the window and watched the frost melt off the grass in the backyard. For the first time this house didn't feel like a battlefield. It felt like mine. Around 10 o'clock a car pulled into the driveway. Slowly, hesitantly, I didn't need to look twice. It was her. Darla stepped out, dressed in actual clothes for once. No robe, no glass of wine, no audience. Her makeup was minimal, her hair pulled back. Her steps were slower, more human. She clutched something in her arms, a handbag maybe or a folded blanket, and paused at the base of the porch before climbing the stairs. Then came the knock, not banging, just a knock. I waited a beat, then opened the door halfway. She blinked at me, and for the first time her face held no smirk, no smug tilt of the chin. Her eyes were puffy, her mouth soft with something that almost looked like regret. Her voice cracked. I wanted to say I'm sorry. I didn't respond. I watched her. She swallowed hard. I know I've said awful things. I've done worse. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't have anywhere to go right now. Her eyes welled. If you could just give me a few days, I'll be out, I swear. The old me would have rushed to fix it. Would have said yes before thinking, because guilt is sticky when you grow up with women like her. But I wasn't that girl anymore. I stepped outside onto the porch, gently pulling the door shut behind me. You're not staying, I said quietly, her breath hitched. Ashley, I'm not kicking you out onto the street. You can stay at a motel or call one of those friends you perform for. I'm sure Sharon or Rhonda have plenty of sympathy left. I'm not asking to stay forever, she whispered. I know, I said, but even a day more is too much. She looked down at her shoes, then at me again, waiting for cruelty, waiting for me to gloat. Instead, I took a breath. I'm not selling the house anymore, I said. She blinked. You're not? I shook my head. No, that was me reacting. This isn't just a house, it's what's left of my grandmother. It's the only place I've ever felt rooted. I paused. But you won't set foot inside again. That boundary is permanent. She nodded slowly. The tears that gathered didn't fall. I understand, she murmured. I didn't before, but I do now. I studied her face. I didn't know if she was telling the truth. I didn't care. I had said what needed saying, without anger, without apology. She turned to leave, no scene, no theatrics, just a woman walking down a porch that never belonged to her. As she reached the bottom step, I opened the door, stepped back inside, and shut it behind me. The click of the lock wasn't loud, but it felt like thunder in my bones. Dignity isn't a scream or a shove. Sometimes, it's just knowing when to close the door. It's amazing how different a house feels when no one's stomping through it like they own the air. The walls don't flinch. The floor doesn't groan. Even the silence sounds warmer now. 3 months have passed. The winter frost has melted into soft rains, and the magnolia tree in the backyard is blooming again. The living room is pale blue now, soft, cool, peaceful. I painted it myself, brushstroke by brushstroke, covering up every inch of Darla's loud red. That red always felt like a threat. This blue feels like an exhale. The kitchen, once a place where I kept my head down and waited for the storm, has become something else entirely. My own small bakery. It started with a few neighbors asking if I still made those lemon muffins they smelled during that open house. Then came the custom cake for a baby shower, the tray of snickerdoodles for the librarian's retirement, the birthday order from a shy teenager who liked extra sprinkles. Now every Saturday morning, my table fills with orders. Handwritten slips, little notes, exact change in envelopes. The same table where I used to eat quietly while Darla insulted my party guests. It's still the same wood. But now it's mine. Bill still lives here. He's quieter now, not the kind of silence that hides things, but the kind that listens. He started helping around the kitchen, slicing lemons, prepping baking pans, even learning how to properly whip egg whites. We don't talk much about what happened. But he says thank you more. And when he looks at me, it's not through the fog of guilt anymore. Once a month, I bring a bouquet of peonies to Grandma's grave, always fresh. Always from the same little shop where the girl remembers my name now. I kneel, talk about the bakery, and thank her again for leaving me something no one else would've. Not just a house. A way out, a way forward. Some days I still hear Darla's voice in my head, sharp, mocking, trying to pull me back into the smallness she needed me to live in. But that voice doesn't run things anymore. Now I know, silence isn't strength. Strength is drawing a line, saying no, holding the door open and knowing when to close it behind someone. And peace. Peace is lemon glaze on a Saturday morning, it's blue walls, it's neighbors laughing in the kitchen. It's coming home and knowing, finally, that home means safety. Not fear, not silence. Me, that was the end of my story. But there's something I keep wondering. My dad knew the truth about the house. He waited years to say anything, and only acted when he had no choice. Did he do the right thing, or have you ever known someone who stayed silent too long until it hurt? Tell me in the comments. And if my story meant something to you, please like this video and subscribe for more stories like mine.